And we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Maggie Dixon. I am the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative Coordinator at Prevent Child Abuse New York. We're reprising this webinar series. We took a little break, but we're so pleased that you're joining us here today for this special session. And we are so excited and thrilled to be joined by Parent Child Plus home visiting program. You'll hear from Andre and Vidya in just a moment. And we also have wonderful guests as well from two New York State regions, sites that are implementing this work and living it and breathing it, Sue O'Brien and Trisha Howland. So you'll hear from them in a few moments as well, but thank you so much for joining us. A couple quick housekeeping items. This session is recorded and will be available on the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative website after today's session. If you registered, you will receive an email from me with all of the details about accessing that information, as well as follow-up information from today's presentation specifically. Also, closed captioning services are enabled for today. If you'd like to turn those on, if they're not already on your screen, you can navigate to the bottom bar. There should be a little button that says CC, and you can go ahead and click those on. Also, we encourage you to use the chat function and introduce yourselves, and chat us questions. We'll be monitoring throughout the session today. So before we get started, I'm actually going to launch a quick poll just to get a sense of who's in the room and ground us kind of in this space today. So we're not sure. I saw from the registration information who you are, what your names are, and the work that you do. But we'd love to know what your familiarity is or involvement is in partnership between home visiting and childcare. And I'm seeing responses live trickle in. So far it's mixed, it's across the board. So we're pretty mixed here. We've got almost even amounts of not very familiar, a little bit more familiar, need to know more, and then almost a majority are split between familiar and I know of this work, or you are already part of this work. Which is really exciting. So that should lead to some robust and interesting conversation momentarily. And I can go ahead and share these results so my co-presenters can see them and my participants can see them as well. So that's really helpful. Thank you so much. We just wanted to kind of get a sense of who we're speaking to right at the onset. So Kari, you can head to the next slide. I know since today we're in the space as a Home Visiting Coordination Initiative webinar, I don't need to do a whole lot of background information about what the HVCI is, but I think it's helpful to just kind of talk about how the HVCI has sparked and worked to encourage this work over the past couple of years. So for those who aren't familiar, the HVCI, we like to call it a forum for innovation, collaboration, and cross-program conversation. And really the intent is to increase coordination within and between home visiting programs across the state of New York. And we recognize that New York State is vast and the regions are so different. And, there can be similar issues, however, in the home visiting space, whether you're in the Adirondacks or New York City. So we wanted to create kind of this vehicle for statewide conversation. So we founded this project in 2018, and with the advent of federal funding in 2019, we expanded statewide with the help of 10 backbone organizations that are mixed organizations. Some are childcare resource and referral agencies, which you'll hear from in just a moment. Some are maternal infant community health collaboratives or perinatal infant community health collaboratives. They changed to pitches. So we have kind of a mix. None of them run a home visiting program except for one. We did that intentionally to kind of just represent a diverse array of organizations that work in the early childhood space. We, during that first year, worked with the 10 backbone organizations to host statewide summits and come out with recommendations for the state around improving home visiting. which fell into 3 buckets: public relations campaign, workforce development, and a system of coordinated intake and referral, which I'll reference in regard to the public relations campaign in just a moment. In addition to this kind of grounding work that we did with the HVCI, we also offer, this is one, monthly webinars, lunch and learns, and forums to provide an opportunity for professional development and connection and conversation. There's a screenshot there of our website, which I can post information about in the chat momentarily, but we are working right now on the website to include more information about this work, about the intersect between childcare and home visiting, to continue. Hopefully what we see is the HVCI's role is continuing to create a forum for this conversation and spark this work moving forward. You can head to the next slide, Kari. So again, just quickly, I know this is one of them, so it's kind of really cool because we're having this, like, I don't know, live experience of what we hope to do, but we really view the webinars as an opportunity for cross-pollination of all these different early childhood systems, and you know, an opportunity to build community and conversation. And this is just, it's a little outdated. This data is from March, but this is just to kind of give an example of how this work is in practice in our webinar series. So we have offered over 42 at this point, webinars of a bunch of different topic areas, but some were specifically around childcare and the childcare workforce. So we've offered some about Aspire, and which is the credentialing service for the early childhood workforce. We've done some in information about ACEs and protective factors, or supporting social emotional well-being and learning. And these are all topic areas that are relevant to both home visiting and childcare providers. Additionally, in addition to our registrants that are home visitors or program administrators or home visiting program supervisors, we also had participants identify themselves as childcare providers or CCR&R staff, or pre-K teachers. And in addition to like these topic areas I aligned here, we've also offered lots of webinars that are very specific to home visiting. So now we've had registrants from the childcare world join and partake in conversation specific to home visiting. So really wonderful example just of that cross-pollination. You can head to the next slide, Kari. In 2021, really quickly, the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative and Prevent Child Abuse New York wrote a white paper funded by Raising New York, specifically about strengthening the intersect between childcare and home visiting. And I'm going to try to be mindful to drop the link as soon as I'm finished speaking in the chat for if you're interested in reading it, but it's also on our website. And in addition to identifying the roles of programs like Help Me Grow, for example, in serving as community connectors and increasing coordination, the paper explored like inclusion of home visitors in Aspire, that credentialing service I talked about previously, promotion of credentials for home visitors like the Child Development Associate, and connection of home-based providers with home visiting programs like Parent Child Plus, which we'll hear about in just one moment. But I just wanted to kind of put that plug in for the paper here, that we planted this seed of this idea in 2021. We also recommended, reporting on data in areas of the state where there is a childcare desert and where there's a home visiting desert, to try to understand that overlap between where services can be needed by families, and understanding the number of families that need services, or where the location of them are. So just an idea here that this happened in 2021 and it's been continued on via the HVCI. You can head to the next slide, Kari. And then finally, where we are today. As I mentioned way back, the first year, a recommendation of the HVCI was a public relations campaign to educate about what home visiting is and what it is not. And we were very fortunate with the use of our federal preschool development grant funding to create public PR flyers about home visiting. And with the help of our amazing BBOs, we were able to roll out a soft launch of these flyers. There's information available on the website, but just a really, again, cool case study of this Intersect that we were able to facilitate and encourage. Two of our backbone organizations are CCRNRs, and they were able to distribute information. We're joined by Bright Side Up today. Trisha, you hear from in just a few seconds. This is a screenshot of a poster that Bright Side Up designed about home visiting, but then it was passed out to childcare providers and parents who have children enrolled in childcare. So this outreach was kind of done specifically to this workforce, and it was a really amazing intersect between the two. So I just wanted to kind of flag that there and talk about how excited we are for that work. So now that I've kind of given you a really quick threw a bunch of information at you, 10-minute blurb about the HVCI and the background behind this project, I'm going to launch a second poll really quickly. And we would love to know, I know a majority of you indicated that you're familiar with this work or you're doing this work in your community already. We'd love to know the number of you and who you are that you're doing this. And hopefully we have a little opportunity for conversation and chat in just a moment. We've got a couple others, but so far it looks like majority is yes, you've pursued these opportunities, over 50% of you. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and share these results. And thank you so much. And I'm going to stop talking with my background information and turn it over to Andre Eaton with Parent Child Plus to talk about this work in New York State.
Thanks, Maggie. And first of all, good afternoon and happy Monday to everybody. It is a privilege to be able to speak with you all today to discuss sort of the evolution of home visiting, particularly in New York State, in the intersection of home visiting, and how we continue to develop and use this methodology to reach more families and children. My name is Andre Eaton. I'm the New York State Director for Parent Child Plus, which is a national and international home visiting program that promotes two programmatic models. Most of you may be familiar with already our one-on-one model, where our early learning specialists, who are the home visitors, who share community connection with families, meet one-on-one with parents who have children as young as 16 months to 48 months, twice a week for 92 visits. And you'll hear in a moment from my colleague Vidya that will talk about our newest model, I still call it new, home-based childcare model in a minute. But I really want to talk about kind of the evolution of building a home visiting network across New York State. When I arrived at Parent Child Plus back in 2007, 2008, we partnered together with programs like SCAA's, the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy, Parents as Teachers, Prevent Child Abuse New York, Nurse Family Partnership, Healthy Families, because we were concerned about the stigma that families felt around home visiting as a methodology for service. Many times families felt that home visiting supports were mostly almost as an invasion into their home lives, and mostly around child abuse and mostly related to healthcare services, for example, with visiting nurses as well. However, most of us know that home visiting touches many different areas of services that include health, education, especially early education, pre-K and prenatal services, and so much more, including advocacy groups, as I mentioned. So a coalition was formed within New York State, and some of you may be familiar with Home is where the start is. That began with discussions around the state on home visits that can be effective in its services, supporting families throughout our state. And as such, this group led panels, held conferences, spoke to legislators and state departments on building a coordinated system, but I would say more than a coordinated system, also a continuum of services around home visiting for families and children. And the focus also included how to bridge the gap between parents and community services resources and make those resources more accessible and available to all parents of different ethnic and cultural backgrounds across the state, whether they be in the city, suburbia, or more rural areas and communities, especially meet those where resources are quite limited. SCAA and the HVCI continue to work with these groups to continue to expand, and Parent Child Plus is very delighted to continue to work with HVCI and Raise New York as well to continue to share these resources and how networks can actually be built and collaborated on many different communities. So we can say that most of the New York State systems have worked with either embedding home visiting services into their programs or are coordinating over time evidence-based home visiting program models to attempt to work through the stigmatization and promote home visiting under a number of different specialties or categories that are, but not limited to, our early education, early childcare, pre-K, Head Start, kindergarten health services, mental health services, parent coaching and modeling, and now our home-based model of care as well. So what we have found out, though, when you're building these collaborations and these networks, there are some guiding principles, and some of these are related to the home V principles. Number one, working with high quality services. Two, fostering activities that promote healthy development and identify atypical development at the early stages possibles. Building positive relationships and continuity with an emphasis on the role of the parent and as the child's and most important, teacher and in relationship. Also inclusion strategies that respect the unique developmental trajectories of young children in context of a typical setting, including children with disabilities as well. Certainly recognizing cultural competence, equity, and the profound role culture plays in early development. And then, as I mentioned before, not only a collaboration of services, but the continuum. So being able to transition, plan, accordingly with other home visiting services, other resources in the community that will help build the families and meet the families' need. And finally, collaboration with community partnerships that allow programs to expand these services over time. So New York State has come a long way since 2007 and 2008. And I am just so grateful of where we are, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So let me turn it over now to my colleague, Vidya Raghu, who will talk about home-based childcare and the Parent Child Plus model.
Thank you so much, Andre. Andre and Maggie, every time I hear you guys speak, I feel so privileged to be working with the two of you. Home-based childcare is, to me, best understood in the history of Parent Child Plus as a home visiting model. And the way that it was framed when it first came about was as innovation, right? So in the 1960s, the Parent Child Plus program was actually known as the Mother-Child Home Program. And if you were around in the 60s, you'll know that there were a lot of stay-at-home parents, mostly women. The program was built to increase the rates of high school graduation. And our founder thought really clearly about high school graduation rates and recognized that it starts in the home. And as we all believe, parents are their child's first teacher. So the Mother-Child Home Program was around in the 60s, and sometime in the late 70s and early 80s, it became the Parent-Child Home Program because we recognized that it wasn't only mothers at home. The home care by the parent was diverse in range of gender, and we became the Parent-Child Home Program. Now, somewhere in the 80s and 90s, parents who were part of the Parent-Child Home Program asked whether or not we could start visiting grandmas, abuelos, aunties, who were taking care of the kids when the parents returned to work. And this was an innovation in the model, visiting grandmothers instead of parents in the home, but grandmothers and childcare programs was something that we decided to take on. And this is one of the early pictures of how Parent Child Plus had become Parent Child Plus to include mothers, parents, fathers, foster parents, child caregivers, family friend and neighbor givers, and then ultimately family child care providers. If you can switch the slide, please. So this is just on our website, and what the home-based childcare model is now is a defined model. We work with home-based childcare providers. So all of our providers, whether they're family, friend, or neighbor, or informal child caregivers, to licensed exempt programs are people that we work with. Anybody who is providing care for young children in their home falls under our home-based childcare model. It was truly led by parents. So parents were the ones who advocated for this model. And what we found is that when parents were returning to work, they wanted their children to continue in the home visiting program. And while our early learning specialists followed the children, childcare providers were asking whether or not we could provide home visiting to them. And so we have a very distinct model today. If you can forward to the next slide, please. A lot of what we do, and some of what you'll see in this video, is work with the childcare provider in providing high quality interactions, high quality learning environments, and improved family-child engagement, so that young children have the opportunity to become pre-K ready or school ready and really reach their potential in child development. So we have early learning specialists who go in for approximately 6 to 8 months, twice a week, working with childcare providers all over the country. This particular video was taken in New Jersey. There's a little book in the background that says New Jersey, Santa Claus is in New Jersey. And this is a provider who has been coached by an early learning specialist. And a lot of what you'll see is how she has incorporated some of the practices that she had received coaching on. So a lot of it is around open-ended questions, having positive regard for children, allowing some level of freedom of movement, asking children to engage in the questions around this book. And this book was also sent home to the parents with some guidance on how to support parents in reading literature to their young children. So we'll play this video and then I will talk about it in a minute. But if you could start the video, that'd be great, Carrie.
The book we are reading is Green Sheep. What is the book? Green Sheep. Where is the green sheep? Where's the green sheep? Who is the author?
Black Sheep writes the
Black Sheep wrote the book?
Yeah.
Who writes the book? Mem Fox is the author. Who is that? Sheep. Right? Mem Fox. Okay, listen. Mem Fox is the author, and we are reading the book. Where is the green sheep? Let us find out. Here is the blue sheep. Do you guys see blue sheep?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a blue sheep too.
This book in home.
You read the book. I'm so glad.
In the night when we were asleep.
Oh my
You
goodness.
I read this one book too.
Awesome sauce. I'm so proud of you guys.
Me too.
I'm so proud of Ishan and so proud of Sandy. I'm very, very happy for you guys.
You can stop the video. Thanks so much. So what I love about this video is that a lot of the practices that we do coaching on has been exemplified with this provider. This was the period of COVID. As you can see, the children all have masks on, but what I love about the interaction here is that you can see and hear and feel all of the emotions and expressions that the provider and the children have, and that there's a real quality of relationship that the provider has with her children. And I don't know if you could hear the children saying in the background, I read this book at home with my mom before we went to sleep. And then another child says, I did too. And the children are just allowed to bring their personality forward while literacy is happening. And this is a very different literacy tactic for this provider who loves reading books, but used to read books on a chair, opening the pages, reading all the words per page, asking children to sit down and be quiet. And during this period of COVID, where sitting down and being quiet might make sense to some people, she's super, super active, super engaged, and really enjoying the children's comments about the book. So if we could go to the next slide, thanks. Thank you. So we have done assessments on our model. The first assessment square is the FECRs. We don't use the entire FECRs. We only use 4 subscales. These are the subscales that we hope to move the needle on in family childcare provider homes, which is listening and talking, activities, interactions, and parent-child engagement. As you can see, the light blue score is the score that is about the 4th visit in, and the dark blue score is the score that providers are getting at about the 44th visit. So within about 40 visits, which again is about 6 months, there's quite an increase. We also check parent participation. We have a parent survey that goes out pre-program and a parent survey that's returned during the end of the program. These are very hard to see, so that's just the way our data is. But the 2 that are, I guess these 2 that are down somewhere in the middle, one of them says, I tell stories to my children. And the answer is most days. And this is not reading the books, but do parents tell stories to children? And their response is, yeah, I tell my children stories on most days. And by the time our program ended, the parents were telling children stories every day. And we know that there's a big impact on parent-child interaction and talking and telling stories. And we're just happy to see that this last column where all the dark blue is, parents are engaging in these activities every day. Another one that's really interesting to me is I engage in imaginary play with my children. And again, this was most days, this actually fell back the least. So this was the least amount that parents were doing at home, and they're doing so much at home to begin with, but they're doing imaginary play sometimes, a couple of times a week. And by the time our program ends, they're doing imaginary play every day with their children, which I just think is so amazing for the young child and the parent and the provider to be able to see this kind of growth in children and in themselves. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is a short video about what providers have voiced and what providers have voiced in terms of working with a home visiting model. As Andrea was speaking, looking at home visiting as something like a mandate is really hard. It's a hard impression to break through, but looking at home visiting through a kind of positive coaching model is an easier, softer way for providers to engage with us. I have to say that providers are the people who are our best advertisers. They speak to each other, they speak among each other. So when we're working with 2 or 3 providers in a region, they usually have a relationship beforehand. So this video really speaks to what providers are getting from our program. Thanks, Carrie.
Nosotras hemos aprendido de Jané bastante, porque como le dije anteriormente, aunque nosotros hicimos un curso, pero con la práctica que Jané a nosotros nos pone en el día a día y en el ambiente físico, a los niños les trae paz, les da tranquilidad, a nosotros nos da seguridad, nos da confianza, aprendemos con ella y el aprendizaje es socioemocional con el niño. Es un trabajo motorizado porque los niños aprenden a utilizar sus manos, sus pies. También es algo que los niños piensan para contestar emocionalmente. El niño comienza a conocer y a coordinar las ideas que tienen.
La misma lectura, ya la lectura se hace ya de manera más dinámica. No es simplemente que le vamos a leer un libro. Ellos quieren llevarse los libros cuando vienen de la casa. Mira, yo le dije a mi mamá que me leyera el libro, o la más grandecito, mira, le leí el libro a mi hermanito o a mi hermanita. De un simple libro, de una foto, podemos sacar infinidad de aprendizaje. Infinidad de aprendizaje. No es necesariamente leer lo que dice el libro, sino ir más allá en cuanto a las fotos, sobre todo cuando uno trabaja con niños, que hay que estarlos involucrando.
Thank you so much. I love these two providers. I love every provider. But what I especially get out of this video, Jeanette, the woman that she was speaking about, is the early learning specialist, and that's the home visitor. That's their title. They go into these daycare homes twice a week, every week for about 6 to 8 months. So there is this daily consistent practice where the home visitor is coaching the provider to engage in these activities. So it really is an adult to adult relationship, and the provider's relationship with children and families is what we're hoping to impact. Some of the things that the first provider talked about was how we hit on physical development, motor development, social emotional development, and how we work through interactions and the learning environment. And that's really great. Our model is kind of grounded in this idea of literacy and play. So you'll always hear books and toys being voiced. They are left with the providers, but the books and toys are really just the tools that promote this level of interaction that this provider is talking about that leads to, and I love her quote, infinite knowledge. So if we can go to the next slide. So the home-based childcare model is a national model. We have sites in the states that have the plus sign on them. I am so super excited to be looking at this model and refining this model. There is a feedback loop directly from providers into the model innovation. So we hear from providers directly. We do assessments with the FECers and with an interaction scale called caregiver-child interaction scale. And in New York State, which I'm so happy to be working in because it is my home state, we've been able to partner with 2 CCR&Rs. 2 people I've been privileged to work with are Trisha and Sue, and I'm going to pass the mic over to them.
Hello, I'm Trisha Howland, and I am from Bright Side Up. I am one of the child care resource and referral agencies that has implemented Parent Child Plus, the home-based model. We just recently started in January, and how we did that work is that we expanded the work of our current positions that some of us hold here at the child care resource and referral agency, such as our legal exempt educators who work with family, friend, and neighbor caregivers, our mental health consultants, infant toddler specialists, nurses, and dietitians, and CACFP visitors. They have such a strong expertise in child development, becoming an ELS to work with the providers was really a great fit into the model for us. We kind of tapped into those strong relationships that we have with the family child care providers and legal exempt child care providers. And currently we have 6 licensed registered providers in the program and 2 legally exempt family, friend, and neighbor caregivers in the home-based model. And that's since January. We also have built strong community partnerships with our libraries, our community action programs, homeless shelters, early intervention agencies, and funders to partner with to receive referrals for the core one-to-one model as well. We have 2 families that we're currently working with. So that is how at Bright Side Up, we began the work of Parent Child Plus, and we are very excited to have this opportunity to start working with our providers on this model and just really go forward. So we're just in the beginning stages. So I will pass it to Sue.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sue O'Brien. I am the Early Childhood Program Manager at Catholic Charities in Syracuse, New York. I am one of the 2 coordinators for our core program of Parent Child Plus, and I am the coordinator for the family child care, home-based child care portion of our program. We started the home-based child care portion of the Parent Child Plus program in November of 2019. Our first program year was going to be November to August of 2020. And 4 months after we started, the pandemic hit. So there was a huge shift and has impacted everything we've done, obviously, since then for everyone, in how we recruit, the number of families, the number of opportunities we have, but we continue to pursue and persevere. Go ahead to the next slide, please, Kari. So our staffing is, we have one coordinator for the program, which is myself, and one early learning specialist, who's amazingly talented and creative and works wonderfully with our providers. Our program typically operates September through June, following the school year calendar as much as possible. We do deliver 2 45-minute visits each week to each provider for a minimum of 48 total visits over the course of the program year. We provide 7 different books to the provider, and each time we provide the provider with a new book, every parent also gets the book. Every child in the program gets the book to take home and use with their parent. And we also provide the daycare providers with 6 quality learning type toys to have in their childcare setting. Go ahead, Kari. So this is what our enrollment has looked like thus far. In 1920, when we just started, we had 6 providers. They were all licensed registered childcare providers. One was a group daycare. They had between them a combination of 25 children that were enrolled in our program. And because of the pandemic, one of them was not able to continue being a childcare provider. That was our group provider, but 5 of them did eventually complete the program with us that year. 5 of the providers. All the children in these numbers have completed. The number at the bottom is a provider. So in 2021, it was mostly virtual, but we did recruit 5 new providers and 5 completed that year. 2021-22 is interesting because it feels like we're coming out of the pandemic at that point, but we had a harder time recruiting providers. Not that providers weren't interested, but the parents were a little shy about having the programming take place in the home-based daycares. We found that a lot of people wanted their children to go to a small setting because they didn't have all the extra visitors coming in and out. And even after we did the intakes with the providers, some of them had to circle back to us and say that wasn't going to be an option because parents weren't comfortable at that point. So we had fewer providers, but we were able to really kind of give them a lot of great information and support during a difficult time. 28 children participated that year, and all 3 of the providers completed. In this current programming year, 22-23, we have 6 providers. So far, 31 children within those 6 providers have been participating, and we don't have a completion yet because they're in progress, but we are confident all 6 will complete this program. Go ahead, Kari. So recruitment and outreach. In the beginning, we're like, okay, how do we find these people? We actually looked on the OCFS daycare provider list and just started calling everybody. And I don't even know how we decided who to call. We just started calling, explaining the program, describing the services, and asked if they'd be interested. And we actually were able to get several of our first participants that way. They were really intrigued to have someone come in and provide some new resources, so that it ended up working for us. It was kind of a strange approach, but we tried. Let's see, 15% were referred by previous participants. So now we're getting more word of mouth. People who've been in the program before that are referring other daycare providers and friends to participate. 35% have come from our work with our local childcare solutions, networking and doing outreach events with them. 15% have come from other outreach events where we tend to, participate in outreach events that focus on early literacy and early childhood services. So we market both our one-to-one core program and the FCC portion of our program whenever we're out in the community. And then this is just brochures, other ways that people might have heard about the program. Our most recent enrolled participant did come to us through information she received when she was when applied for the desert grant. So she was able to connect with community resources, or encouraged to connect with community resources, and she reached out to us, and we've recently got her enrolled, and we're real excited to have her on board to continue our services with her. Next slide, please. So I know this one's hard to see. This is just a sample of what our program year might look like with a provider. Each material, so we call them VISMs, each material, either the book or the toy, we focus on for 4 visits. So we will introduce the material to the provider and the child. The second visit for that week, they really focus on doing some enrichment with that particular material, rereading the book, doing some movement activities, doing art activities. The third visit, we really try to encourage the providers right from the start to kind of take charge of that visit. We support them in planning, support them with materials that they may need to do any extra activities, craft activities, whatever they might come up with. It's a process. Sometimes the providers just kind of look to our early learning specialists to kind of take the lead when they're in there. And we really focus on empowering them to know that they are, the important teacher in this role here in the daycare setting. And then the 4th visit, we really try to wrap up with the provider, ask them what went well, what kind of feedback they got from the family, what the children liked about it, and to plan together what we're going to do in the next session. We really try to clump things together, as you'll see, like the bear in the square and our 100 shapes. They all focus on shapes and colors. So we really expand and repeat any of the early learning principles we're trying to incorporate into the daycare. Go ahead. Parent engagement, this is super important to us, that parents are always seen, as everyone has mentioned, as the first and foremost important teacher in a child's life. So we want to make sure that all the information and everything we're doing is kind of taking the next step forward and going home with the children. So we do this childcare newsletter each month, or at least every other month we try to get it out, and it is specific to the particular daycare. So this one says, I think it's Miss Kathy's daycare, this one, and it just has pictures of her and her children in it. Miss Jan's daycare is going to have her pictures and her children in that and focus on the activities that they did. The parents love to see these. It kind of gives them some more activities and ideas of how to continue the learning at home. But the kids love to see these newsletters. They love to see themselves in their pictures. It's always such a highlight for them to get these newsletters at home. So here's just a few quotes from, we didn't have some video to import here, but here's some quotes that we've received from providers about the services and the benefits to them in their daycare setting. I've gained more confidence in my ability to get families excited about their children's progress. Participating in this program has really helped me change things up and learn new skills. It's created better communication with families. The second quote is from somebody who's been in the business for years, but really, the business of childcare can often be very isolating. So she's really excited to have a home visitor come in and help her refresh her ideas and really help foster her skills that she already has, but to help her, feel like she's changing things up and really fresh with the kids and the families. The parents have really loved receiving the new books and reading them at home. And then the quote at the bottom is from a parent. The guide sheets are very helpful because they give ideas on what questions to ask the children or while reading. So in addition to these newsletters, every time we send a book home, we send a guide sheet with the parents on how to use this book while they're reading to their child at home. Go ahead, Carrie. Providers are also excited to share their experience about the Parent Child Plus program coming in as a home visiting service. They post their unique letters to their private Facebook pages. That's not something that we do on our end, but they often do share that with the families. They'll send video clips home during the day to the families to see how the kids are engaging in the play and the reading and all the different things they're doing. there's a lot of excitement about this program. Our early learning specialist also connects with all the parents that are involved in the program to offer the Talk, Read, Sing, Talking is Teaching program that through our Early Childhood Alliance. And that gives us another opportunity to really engage with each of the parents. Whenever possible, we try to make that connection as well. Go ahead. This is one of my favorite things from the whole time we've had the program. This is the provider that one of the first providers we had in 19 to 20. So she started in December of 2019, ended with us in June of 2020. She kept adding to this like poster board that she created showing all the materials that she had received, and reviews could always look at it. It was hung in her daycare so the parents could always see when they walked in what the kids had been doing and the progress of the program. It's just such a colorful, like clear expression of her appreciation of what they were doing. I just love this. Go ahead. Again, this is one of the initial graduations that we had during COVID. This particular provider set up a red carpet, which was like a dollar store plastic red tablecloth, but she set up a red carpet in her front lawn, and we had the little chairs sitting out there, and the kids walked the red carpet to graduate, and they couldn't be more proud of themselves, and she couldn't have been more proud of everything she had done to really grow and enhance her in-home program. Excuse me. So I think this is her quote at the top. I've enjoyed this experience so much. It's enhanced my in-home daycare in many ways. I'd recommend Parent Child Plus services to new providers, as well as those who've been in the business for a long time. We've kind of flip-flopped on who are we going to target when we're recruiting. We thought it might be best to start recruiting new providers to really give them extra materials and to give them, support as they're starting out. But we have found that anybody that's been in the business, whether they're family friend and a neighbor provider, they've been in the business a long time, or brand new, we really adapt the program to what they need, and everybody's really been great with it. Go ahead. So if you've seen the full Parent Child Plus logo, it says equal possibilities from the start is the tagline at the bottom. And I know everybody else has some great data to provide, but this is the best data I think you're ever going to see. Last year during one of our community events where we worked with the Early Childhood Alliance, Help Me Grow, our local libraries, and this event took place at the zoo, we invited all of our graduates from the program, and the kids had to sit through some political speeches, and they were all very well behaved. But when our county executive was talking about the importance of enriching early learning opportunities in our community, and saying how when children have participated in programs such as Parent Child Plus and these other early learning initiatives, that these kids are now entering school much more prepared, ready to learn, ready to succeed, entering with confidence. And this little girl here, she just looked at the early learning specialist who's sitting next to her, and she said, "He's talking about me." So she knew that she was entering school prepared with confidence and ready to learn because of some of the programming, the reinforcement she's received through our home visiting services. So if ever there's a testimony to, does this work? The kids really advance, to the providers advance. I really believe that says it all right there. So thanks, Carrie.
I think that chat message just says it perfectly. That was a goosebump moment and a perfect note to end on, if I could say. And Vidya, to your comment earlier, every time I listen to you speak and listening to Sue and Trisha speak, I'm just filled with gratitude for being in this space with all of you to be able to create this presentation and talk about this work. We have a couple minutes if anybody wants to put some comments in the chat or partake in some discussion. I do want to quickly put 2 points here at our conclusion. Although today's session was very specific to the Parent Child Plus home visiting program, we hope that the home visiting coordination initiative can be a model neutral space to just have conversations about these opportunities. And we'd hope that, you know, participants today can be encouraged to think creatively about, I know we had over half of our participants say that they're doing this work in their communities or they're familiar with this work. I'd love to know if all of that is about Parent Child Plus work, or if you're exploring opportunities in your community with different partnerships with home visiting programs. So that is to say, this session is just is to give an idea and to spark some creativity and to learn about some of the work that's been happening nationally and in New York State. And also, I was chatting a little bit about in the chat the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative and the blending and braiding of funds to support and sustain home visiting guide, which is available on our website. And I can go ahead and link that in the chat. But this is a guide that we authored very specific to home visiting funding streams and the landscape in the state and then also the federal level. But I think it's an interesting frame, and it's on the HVCI reports tab. It's an interesting frame to just think about if you're really interested in pursuing this work, to just think about opportunities for fiscally on the community and state level. So just a little frame there that we're happy to chat about. And now I will stop talking and create space in the chat for questions. And just lots of thank yous. Maybe we're all just kind of recovering from that goosebump moment. So. So I will also link, as promised, the paper that I mentioned earlier about this work, where we specifically mention Parent Child Plus, but also the intersect between childcare and home visiting. And we do have a question. Are early learning specialists familiar with childcare regulations? Are they there to enforce regulations? And perhaps Vidya could answer that question, or?
Yeah, so our early learning specialists are trained for about 16 hours before they go out on their first visit. They also receive reflective supervision with their coordinator. And regulations is not something that we look at. We do look at, we're all mandated reporters. So we do look at situations that may harm or cause a certain amount of neglect for children. But the early learning specialist knows the regulations very loosely, and they are not there to enforce regulations at all. Is the Parent Child Plus program a curriculum? No, it's not a curriculum. Sometimes family childcare providers will develop curriculum or choose curriculum after working with the program, but it really is an adult to adult coaching model where the early learning specialist is working with the adult in the program to create curriculum. We often get confused with curriculum. And that is an area where I hope to clarify, but it is not curriculum.
I'll add to that too. We have 3 of our 6 providers are currently accessing the creative curriculum through our Child Care Solutions Center has helped them with that. So we support that work that they're doing with them, but we really kind of try to do from a strength-based perspective on where the provider's current strengths and resources and assets are, and to really support them in that. And then our curriculum is just based on the materials that we're providing and what they are willing and able to do to enhance that learning in the home. So it's not a strict or rigid curriculum at all for them.
I can talk about the overlap with the work of Quality Stars, unless you want to take that question, Andre.
Go ahead, take it for the Quality Stars, and I'll talk about the finances and starting programs. But go ahead, Vidya.
So Quality Stars New York is the quality rating and improvement system of New York State that looks at childcare providers, childcare centers, and public school programs. This is not a quality rating and improvement system at all. And the overlap is maybe we sit in some meetings together. But if if you were to look at it, it might be a parallel process, but we are also engaged in only provider development, parent-child engagement, interactions, and the learning environment. So we are a small standard in Quality Stars New York's standards, but there really is no overlap.
Mhm.
So I hope that clarifies that question.
I would just add that to that, though, there are ways to refer through Quality Stars to our program, and others, in particular our partners, as you see, that have been discussing their home-based childcare with us as well, where they're in different regions as well. Let me just say on the financial support, just as Maggie has mentioned, it's a blended and braided model like everything else that we do. We do get some state funding through OCFS, primarily through OCFS, and then a lot of private foundations and so forth that we have to reach out to every year to help support our program partners statewide as well. And we'd be willing to discuss with all of you too, if you are interested in starting a program with Parent Child Plus. My email address is on the screen now. Be glad to talk to you one-on-one, particularly those of you who have limited resources in what's considered to be childcare deserts across the state. We really want to go to many of the areas where we're not in and partnering. We are in the 6 largest regions, Parent Child Plus is, as Vidya pointed out where we are on the map, as far up as Onondaga County, Buffalo, New York City, Long Island, Rockland County, Westchester County, and New York City as well, just to name a few. But we're always looking for ways that we can expand our programs. And the best way that as you've seen today, has been through word of mouth with many of our home-based providers, as well as many of our families who do the one-on-one model as well. So we're looking to expand both models as much as possible across the state.
Thank you so much, Andre. I also wanted to add that we do provide childcare providers with local resources that further support their work and their program. So the community resources, and Sue touched on this quite a bit, once they're working with a early learning specialist, there's a level of access to the childcare world that they have that they may not have had prior to working with an early learning specialist. And I think the relationship that's built between provider and early learning specialist allows the provider to inevitably talk about all of their needs. And there is a match between what their needs are and what's available in the community. So Quality Stars is something that I know some of our providers have been referred to as well. So we refer to the QRIS system, and the QRIS system hopefully refers to us too.
And while also providing other wraparound services around those families too as well. So though you've heard about our particular program, which really focuses on early childhood education and coaching as well, programs that are here today also have those other wraparound services that can give additional supports to those families as well. And I also want to mention culture as well. The books also can be given out in the native languages of the families as well. And we do it in more than 50 languages, I believe, through Parent Child Plus. So.
I don't know if you have a few more moments to answer some questions, speakers, but we have a couple more in the chat here about what is the age range for children participating, and can it be individualized for other age ranges such as infants and toddlers?
I'll take that one if it's okay.
Absolutely.
So our core one-to-one program is primarily focused on children between 18 months and 4 years old. So a lot of the materials are specific to that age. In the home-based childcare setting, we know that they're caring for infants, sometimes their own, but children, that up 6 weeks to usually school age. So our materials are typically for preschool age children, but we really incorporate all the children into the visit. So as soon as the babies, if they're sitting in their little car seats, whatever, sleeping during the visit, we want them present. They're hearing the music, they're hearing the sounds, they're hearing the reading. Because the program lasts for such a long period of time, those little 6-month-olds are usually a year old by the end of the visit. So the dynamics of how they've participated have changed. The families still all get the same materials. You could see in one of the pictures that we had the daycare provider holding one of the youngest ones in her lap as the older ones were playing the instruments and engaging. So the materials are all relevant and great for all ages in the daycare. And based on like the population, if they have more infants in the daycare or if they have more like 3 or 4-year-olds, our early learning specialists will adapt some of the materials that she brings and the enhancement materials, but everything is very appropriate for any child under school age. And we do take into consideration, like when we do puzzles, we will do large knob puzzles, little small peg puzzles, big block puzzles. We deliver that whole range of them to them. So whoever's in the childcare that needs that particular material has access to that.
Thank you, Sue.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, can providers use the coaching towards program training credit?
We wish. So we so wish that providers could get credit for all that they're doing in their home. And that is not something that we have been able to really look at yet. I'm not sure if that's something that we'll be able to target right now. A couple of our initiatives are a workforce development program. So we are working with parents who have received home visits to look into whether or not they'd be interested in early childhood education. And we're hoping to connect parents to some of the resources on how to start a home-based childcare, how to start a family childcare. And we provide access to the training that they can get credit for, but currently we don't provide credit for the coaching.
Thank you. I know we're a couple minutes past the hour, and I know some people had to hop off, but thank you so much for staying on, and thank you so much to our speakers for staying on. I see no more questions in the chat, but please send Andre, Vidya, Trisha, or Susan an email. On behalf of Prevent Child Abuse New York and the HVCI, thank you very, very much to Parent Child Plus, to Andre and Vidya for joining us today. Thank you to Bright Side Up and Trisha, and thank you to Catholic Charities, Onondaga and Sue, for joining us and speaking about your work. We will be in touch after today's session. I will be in touch via email with follow-up information, contact information. I'll inquire about whether we can send slides, but definitely resources will be available, and this session will be available on the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative website. So thank you. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you.